you're seeing this video, hopefully you know a thing or two about why I make these videos. They aren't some shallow attempt to get views from reviewing popular games, they're more of a personal reflection of my experiences with games that affect me, a sort of diary where I record my interpretations of these games through the lens of my personal life. But you don't know that because it's the first video on this channel, or might as well be. If this video makes it on a channel, I will be surprised because I've tried this so many times. I've tried many channels and I've 50 odd full or near full scripts from videos that are just sitting there from when I started this in 2016. Why have I not gone through with it? Really, I don't know. When I would fully complete a script, I wouldn't share it because of its effect. For hundreds of years, people have been analyzing the media they're presented with, then sharing these views and their gain knowledge with others. This changes how we see the media. Whether you subconsciously know it or not, you have a different experience with this art than if you weren't given anyone else's opinion on first viewing. That's the true reason I make these scripts, as a concrete, unmalleable record of how I felt about these things, with no one else's input or ideas warping my own. If even one person sees these videos and hasn't already formed ideas of what these games mean personally, then I've changed the value of the art and what they can get out of it. But as 2021 draws to a close, I need to at least try and make these videos again. They don't have to be perfect or even good, but I've always had such an urge to do this exact thing. And I'm only hurting myself by not pursuing it. Whenever something truly affects me, I have a need to share it, and I feel an impermanent conversation really doesn't do it justice. I feel that if my experiences are not documented and shared, then it didn't happen, and therefore did not have value. I feel distinctly familiar with the story of Coda and Davy, as a creator and a perceiver. The connection between these two roles are endless in their complexities. When writing these scripts, all I feel is endless doubt and hesitant thoughts. Is this what I think? Is this what I feel? Is this just what makes me seem the most pretentious? The most deep? Do I have any real ideas or understanding of anything? Or am I just the product of unperceivable stimuli making me feel and think the way I do? I remember Coda thinking, how do I pursue things when the path is so unclear? I see my problems be understood so fully and yet just as distant. Where does my interpretation end and where does the truth begin when there is no objective answer to be found? Did Coda leave his games out of the public eye for this particular reason? Putting extreme assumptions over these choices makes creators have pressure to overanalyze answers to the questions they don't even know, thus limiting what they can get out of it through this restrictive and reductive barrier. Their escape becomes just as much of a prison as the thing they were trying to escape from in the first place, and they can't have a proper release. This is why Coda stopped making games. He's no longer using game creation as a positive personal release. From his first game, we can see his love and connection to games as an art form, simply for themselves and nothing more. It didn't matter if no one else saw these games because that wasn't the point. From when Davy started taking interest in Coda's games, things took a turn for the worst. For Coda, it is now a delicate circus act, balancing his own catharsis and entertaining others' feelings and interpretations of what should be happening instead. We literally see Davy change Coda's games to fit his view of what should be happening, to make it better. We see Davy change the outcome of Escape from Whisper after the character sacrifices himself.
Hey, you there, in the engine room. You could save us all. That beam is powering the whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam. It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead. the beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him.
There's no objective answer to this ending, but Davy adds it on. In his version, when you step into the laser, you die. Why? Because Davy was fixing it and saying things like giving it a proper ending. We see Davy overanalyze every aspect of Coda's games. In the first game of his that we see, Davy talks about a floating box in the sky as a symbol that this was a real creation and had a human element to it. This is a fine subjective analysis, whether or not you believe this is just a box that Coda forgot to remove from the sky. This is why you need to be careful when trying to analyze games. Our personal views can be taken objectively. We need to make it absolutely clear that these are just personal interpretations of how we feel after seeing these games. We see this incredibly harmful relationship forming. Davy says that these games give him a better insight into the person making them. But in most regards, this couldn't be further from the truth. When the text of a book says the curtains are blue, sometimes the curtains are just blue. It doesn't mean that the character is depressed, and sometimes boxes in the sky are just left there by accident, meant to be picked up later. Does Coda making these games show that he is horribly depressed? Maybe. But we can't blatantly make that assumption like Davy does. After Escape from Whisper, we see a few short games that Coda worked on. They are short and concise and get their point across quickly. Coda is properly using games as a positive escape and is making games that relate to him and his situation. The first game where the story starts to show its real red flags are in a certain game called Nonsense in Nearly Every Direction. This game is simple enough, a game where you go upstairs and see some of Coda's ideas for games. But the catch for this game is as you go up the stairs, you get slower and slower until you are barely moving a crawl. What is this trying to tell us, you ask? Maybe Coda's hesitation for game making or something else. But we know for a fact we are supposed to be gaining something through this waiting experience that ultimately adds to the game and makes it unique in its message. But what does Davy do? He speeds up the game for the sake of convenience, losing the point of this game entirely and lessening its value to a certain degree. In the next game, we see the first instance of Coda's door puzzle, which we see through the whole game. The ending to this game ends us in a plain room, and after Davy removes the walls, we see that there is actually a lot more to this game than we could have known, and we hear this voice line that stuck out to me.
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I actually find it funny that this game comes after the Stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the Stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior, and then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player. So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
Davy still doesn't get the point. These games were never meant to be shared and can't be viewed the same way as a game that was meant to be shared. I have another clip that explains what I'm feeling here quite well.
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that. This is something that he and I used to argue about a lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And I would always defend that, you know, all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games. that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
Davey feels like he has a say in these games, even when they're not his, saying seemingly innocent but in reality very loaded phrases like Coda's original version and acting like a secondary designer in these games. They're very reminiscent of director's cuts of games, like we are hearing someone who knows the answers and actually has the right and knowledge to say something to this degree, or an extension how some video essays can turn out. He goes on to talk about the idea of playable games, and the game should be easy to grasp. Well, Coda disagrees, saying that they are just as valid if not easily playable. Davey thinks that notions like locking your players in a prison cell for an hour and making them sit with their own thoughts don't add to games as a medium. Davey further proves Coda's point after their argument. Coda sends Davey hundreds of playable games where you just move in an empty room. Davey sees if there is maybe an Easter egg or something below the surface, but to no avail. Coda shows us that making games for the pure sake of being playable limits us and takes away what is truly possible to show. At the end of this level, we see our first light post, a marker added by Davey to give more validity and structure to his analysis. He thinks that if only these games were connected through some common tangible thread, then it would allow us to glean a greater meaning from it.
Either way, to me they convey a sense of loneliness. I see this person who's filled with thoughts and feelings and beliefs and has no way to express them except as scattered and unheard voices in a game that wasn't meant to be played. But it's ironic, isn't it, that in playing this game and seeing how alone Coda often felt, that we get to know him better and actually kind of connect with him. And I have to be honest with you, this idea is really seductive to me, that I could just play someone's game and see the voices in their head and get to know them better and have to do less of the messy in-person socializing. I could just get to know you through your work.
This idea of knowing someone fully through their work alone is blatantly wrong. The notion that we learn everything we need to about the real Davey Wreden by playing the Stanley Parable is absurd. That we can see that he is some postmodern game maker that questions the very idea of choice in games, and that's all we need to know about him as a person. But this Davey doesn't see that. He feels that if he digs deep enough and finds all the secrets and makes a few changes here and there, then he can figure out everything he needs to know about Coda. But I'm getting off track. We see a few more games that show us Coda's gradual disconnect with games as an outlet, and that he isn't getting as much peace out of it as he used to. And eventually, we get a game called The Machine.
And of course, it's the machine.
He gives up. The machine stops. What's the point of continuing if the reason he does it now is gone? Why waste his time? We see Davy's own interpretations of what Coda's game should be, overanalyzing every word that is spoken or written. Was this a sign? Should I have seen it sooner? Was it always here? We literally see Davy destroying Coda's games through his own interpretations and changes. After this, Coda takes some time and then sends Davy his last ever game, the Tower. This game is in direct opposition of Davy. It is made to be kept away by people at all cost, fully rejecting the idea of being playable. There is an invisible maze that resets you when you hit a wall, a code that must be brute forced, and a door that cannot be opened without altering the game's files. This is the first game of Coda's that was actually meant to be played by Davy, and we see that, as it is perfectly crafted with him in mind.
I remember, it's June of 2011. I'm playing this for the very first time. And as I'm playing, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know this person. I have no idea who this person is. It wasn't the guy I knew. It wasn't my friend. I had come to so many conclusions from looking at all of his work up to this point, and then suddenly none of them... I had been trying to, though. That was the thing. For years, I was trying to get to know him, to understand who he actually was and what he stood for. I asked him so many times to please just tell me what his games mean to him. I asked him please to tell me what the 3 dots mean. And he wouldn't.
We see Davy's lack of true connection to Coda once again. When these games are in the exact confines of what Davy understands and is comfortable with, he's lost. This game doesn't fit into the picture of what Coda is to him, and he can't change that. He can never truly change that.
I just felt so strongly that if I could have connected with him, that if I could have somehow made his work my own, that I would finally be once and for all happy. It was that I needed to see myself in someone else. I needed to be someone other than me. But he stopped and left, and it felt somehow like I had failed. Where did I screw up? I'm the reason that you stopped making games, aren't I? It's because of what I did. I poisoned it for you. I don't think I ever told you this, but when I took your work and I was showing it to people, it actually felt... it felt as though I were responsible for something important and valuable. And the people who played them, they treated me like I was important. They really listened and cared about what I had to say. Even though I was showing your work, I felt good about myself. Finally, for a moment, while I had that, I liked myself. And then you stopped, and I didn't have anything left to show people. I just had to be with myself. And as soon as that happened, there was no feeling at all. Nothing. Less than nothing. What does that mean? I'm afraid that I did something really stupid because I don't like myself. That's why I'm releasing this collection of your work, is because I haven't been able to find any other way to reach you. I've tried everything. And so a part of me has hope that if I put this compilation out into the world, and if I put my name on it, that maybe enough people will play it so that it'll find its way to you, so that I can tell you that I'm sorry. I know I screwed up. If I apologize to you truly and deeply, will you start making games again? Please, I need to feel okay with myself again. And I always felt okay as long as I had your work to see myself in. I mean, is something wrong with me? Because I know that I did an awful thing, and I'm doing it again right now. Like, I'm showing people your work, but I can't stop myself from doing it. That's how badly I need to feel something again, like I'm an addict. There has to be something wrong with me. Can I apologize? What if I tell you I was wrong? Will that work? Will that fix it? I don't know. I don't think it will, but there's nothing else that I can do. Just tell me what you want. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, start making games again. Please help me. Please give me some of whatever it is that makes you complete. I want whatever that wholeness is that you just summoned out of nothing and you put into your work. You were complete in some way that I never was. And I want to know I want to know how to be a good person. I want to know how not to hate myself. Please. I'm fading, and all I want is to know that I'm going to be okay.